You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Interview Tuesday once again here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. The day of the week where we go out, we find intriguing guests and pick their brains. On behalf of you, the listeners out there, my name is Mark Longo, of course, from the aforementioned Options Insider Radio Network, as well as the old OptionsInsider.com. Hope you guys are enjoying the slew of content that's hitting you, not just on Interview Tuesday, but throughout the week. Education Wednesday, you got Monday with the option block and crypto, Thursday with TWIFO and the option block again. You got Vol Views on Friday, a whole bunch of other stuff scattered there throughout the week. Remember, if you like all of that, keep those reviews coming on your platform of choice. We've seen a huge influx of newcomers to the options market discovering our content here in 2020. We want to keep that flow going, give them a reliable place to turn in these somewhat turbulent times, so keep those reviews coming. Keep those questions coming, too. We do love to hear from you guys. And let's see who we're hearing from on the old Options Insider Radio program this week. We are joined once again by an old friend of the network, even though he hasn't been on in a little bit, Mr. Todd Rich, the head of education over there at Nadex. Todd, welcome back to the Options Insider Radio program.
So happy to be here, Mark. I appreciate you inviting me back, although you just called me an old friend. Is that a slight to my age?
Experienced, seasoned.
Fair enough.
Deep bench of expertise over there at Nadex. How's that sound?
That'll work. That'll work.
Well, I was just checking here before you came on, and the last time you were on was actually back in June of this year. So it's been a good 5 months or so since we've checked in with you guys over there at Nadex. Obviously, a lot has gone on in the world and indeed in the markets since that time back in early June. So catch us up. We'll get to the election in a second because I know that's a very specific moment in time. But just since June, what have you guys been seeing over there at Nadex? I mean, obviously, we've heard anecdotally from pretty much everywhere and sundry that these small, quote-unquote, one-lot options traders are just invading the marketplaces through places like Robinhood and these other kind of newer introductory style brokers. That type of environment would also seem to be pretty favorable to the binary scene over there at Nadex. So what have you guys been seeing over there, Todd?
Indeed, we've seen exactly that. Just as you've gotten an influx of new options traders into your environment, people looking for access to information and insights, at Nadex, we have seen a very large influx of new traders. And we've seen a large influx in trading volume. What's interesting is where we're seeing it. In the last handful of months, since we spoke last, we've launched a brand new website. We've upgraded our platform and technology. We've added a variety of additional contracts, and we've just seen some explosive growth with a lot of newcomers into our markets, specifically because they're designed for the retail trader. Right? They come to Nadex because we have these small binary options or these small knockout contracts, or even our call spreads for that matter, where for a new trader, someone who isn't long in the tooth in the markets, when you've got a very defined risk, defined reward, small retail contract, so you know you're not getting in over your head, you're never going to get a margin call, you're never going to get just blown out because something went completely in your face. Everything is very definable in terms of potential risk, potential reward before you even go into the trade. And that is really well suited to these small retail customers who are wanting to access the markets and participate in the volatility.
Now, it seems like every time I talk to you guys, you have some sort of new upgrade just on the horizon, or it's in the offing, or it's coming up. So it sounds like since last time we chatted, you guys have done just that. You've upgraded the Nadex platform yet again. So walk us through some of these upgrades. What can people look forward to now when they're coming over there to nadex.com to kick the tires and trade some binaries?
A lot of it has been functionality on the platform and to make it a better trading experience, particularly when it comes to the charts, being able to do all of your analysis and technical analysis all in one place, making it very easy for you to see, okay, what is it that I'm looking to do? Where do I identify potential opportunities? And then making it as seamless and easy as we can for you to then implement that strategy. But we are always upgrading our technology. I will tell you, in the past week, volume just hugely explosive. I think everyone saw that. It was odd. We'll talk about the election later because I don't think there was that much volatility around the election itself, but news tangential to the election. But fortunately for us, our systems, our infrastructure, everything remains solid. I know others, and I would never wish that upon anyone, but I know others had some technical difficulties when systems get overloaded and flooded. And we've definitely upgraded our infrastructure and our capacity to handle that so that we don't, or hopefully don't ever experience outages or things of that nature. So we fortunately made it through that pretty well. But yeah, definitely trying to just make the whole trading experience better. And again, adding a lot of new contracts, particularly in our knockouts product. And if you're not familiar with knockouts, it's a defined risk reward contract. You're trading a Delta One product, but it's got built-in profit goals and stop loss goals where there is no slippage. If you hit your profit goal, the contract settles. If you're wrong and it hits your max loss, you're out, and you're not going to lose any more. But we've got a variety of different contracts ranges across commodities, indices, foreign exchange, and we've added a lot in that suite of products because we've had a demand in our knockout products. And it's been interesting to see where that growth has come and where all the trading volume has come from. It used to be back in the day, everything at Nadex was around those binary options in the foreign exchange space. And while that is still a core of what we do, we have seen a lot of the newcomers into the markets. While they might be interested in the foreign exchange products and there's been opportunities, they've definitely been drawn toward our indices products as well as our commodity products.
Interesting. Let's get into some of that a little bit because obviously you're right. It has been traditionally binaries associated with Nadex and traditionally around things like the U.S. indices, some of the FX, and indeed even energy as well. You mentioned new products on the knockout front. Are there new underlyings to go with that as well, or is it the same suite of underlyings? You just expanded the availability of knockouts on them?
Oh, we actually added knockouts for commodities. So we had some pent-up demand for people wanting to access the gold and the crude oil markets in particular. But to that, we've also added silver and nat gas. So when you're coming and looking for commodities, whether it's the metals or the energies, people have found a place at Nadex with knockouts in those products. We added a whole suite of knockouts to complement our core foreign exchange listings. We only had some of the major pairs available in knockouts, but people really wanted to get into our knockout markets, and they wanted to be able to access other foreign exchange products. So we expanded in the foreign exchange space. And as always, we've got our knockouts around the U.S. indices, where and that's where we've seen a lot, particularly in the markets. It's where a lot of the volume is being focused now, particularly with some shifts happening in the marketplace between the small caps like the Russell 2000 and the Dow Jones Industrials versus, say, technology stocks over at the Nasdaq 100. It's been rather interesting. And again, I don't think some of these shifts or changes are based on the election. I think they're, while the election is out there, and that is definitely something everyone's talking about, I think a lot of those changes that we're seeing and the volume that we're seeing and the way that people are participating more has to do with this whole pandemic that's in the background still.
Yeah, pandemic certainly looming large out there, looming large this week as well. Let's give a real quick refresher. We have had a lot of new listeners join us even since the last time you were on, Todd. A lot of them may be familiar with your traditional futures options. The underlying is obviously derived from the underlying futures contract. You guys have commodity offerings, other things like that. But where are you deriving the underlying from? Let's break that down for our listeners a little bit.
So, yeah, for the underlying in our foreign exchange products, it is to the spot market. That's something our parent company is IG out of London, which is a publicly traded company. So we do have access to those spot markets for our foreign exchange products, but all of our commodities and indices do settle to the futures markets. So it's a way for people to access the price movement in these futures markets, but again, in a very small, limited notional value, defined risk, defined reward environment. Now, so for instance, in our indices products, whether it's binary options, and if you're not familiar with binary options, it's a proposition. Is the NASDAQ going to be above a certain price in a certain period of time? And it's a prediction. Either the prediction is going to be true or it's going to be false. And if it's true, the contract will settle at 100. If it's false, the contract will settle at 0. You can buy or sell them, and they'll fluctuate. The price that you're actually trading is the probability that the statement will be true come settlement. But people day trade these a lot. The price movement in these products will fluctuate as time approaches expiration, as the underlying moves, if volatility increases or decreases. And so people can day trade these, and they don't have to worry about pattern day trading rules. And again, since Nadex contracts are so small, like our binary options, the maximum a contract could ever be worth is $100. And everything is fully collateralized up front. You'll never have to worry about a margin call. There's none of these surprises. It really is geared directly to the retail trader. So yeah, if people are looking for access to the indices markets and they are interested in futures, but maybe they're a little too big for them, or they're a little intimidating in regards to some of the terms like margin, performance margin, and other futures industry terms. At Nadex, we just make it super easy. Here's the contract. Binaries that can't be worth more than 100. Our knockout contracts, they do have a range. I think most of them are around $500 contracts. I think the NASDAQ one is a $600 contract. So again, small notional value, where if you don't have a lot of capital, you can access the price movement, you can access the price action, you can trade the volatility, and you can learn and dabble in the markets without having to have large capital requirements to get into the game or to leverage yourself. You simply don't have to worry about that margin call surprising you at some point.
Yeah, so it's not an esoteric underlying that the folks may have to, wait a minute, what is this thing? How do I calculate? I just wanted to get exposure to crude, and instead I have this weird esoteric underlying. They're underlyings people are actually familiar with, Todd.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the interesting thing is, now crude oil, we'll call it crude oil, and nat gas, we call it nat gas, and gold and silver the same way. When it comes to the indices, even though it is settling to the futures contract, you do see a different name over at Nadex. So, for instance, instead of seeing S&P 500, while it's settling to that futures contract at Nadex, it's the US 500 or the Tech 100 for the NASDAQ. So we have these other names, or the industrial 30. So we have different names, but they do actually trade and they settle to the Wall Street 30. Sorry, but I said the industrial 30. The Wall Street 30, and then the U.S. Small Cap 2000, which is the Russell. So while you might see these different names, it actually settles to those futures products. So the Nadex indicative index, the indicative price that you see on the Nadex platform, is in fact that front month futures contract.
Well, let's get to the big event immediately in the rearview mirror. Of course, we're talking about the election leading up into this event. People were talking about it like it was going to be the volatility event of the year. We saw some interesting tumult there overnight. If you're curious about how all that unfolded, listeners, I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, check out our epic multi-part election night spectacular. I know a lot of you joined us live on the night and during the event itself. If you missed it or maybe missed some part of it, it's hitting the network in smaller bite-sized, about half-hour pieces. I think part 5 just hit the network, I believe, as we speak. So you can catch up that way as well. A lot of great analysis of what was going on immediately as the returns were coming in during election night. But Todd, you kind of alluded to it. We've seen an explosion of trading in the immediate aftermath of the election, not the least of which because the indices saw an explosion to the upside last week. And then coming into this week, we have the pandemic news that drove another explosion of upside and another furious explosion of trading volume. As you alluded to, some of the other major platforms, Schwab and TD, amongst others, had some serious issues keeping up with that volume. So I'm glad to hear that wasn't the case over there at Nadex. But what was going on? What were people trading up during this explosion of volume leading into and coming out of the election, Todd?
And we saw the same thing that everyone else is seeing, and it was really rather interesting. And again, I'm going to say it really had less to do with the election and more to do with the pandemic. When the news came out that there's this vaccine that's on the horizon, you saw people's opinions on the market. There was a lot of money that was flowing into tech stocks and to technology in anticipation of a longer, protracted time of people having to remain in place. Now, we still could have that. That's the irony of it all is they're saying that it still could be 18 months before enough vaccines are created, distributed, enough people actually take them, right? We actually have to get them into people, and then for herd immunity to eventually build up. But you saw everyone start, and we saw it in our products and our volumes. People shifting out of some of the technology, looking at some of the stocks that had really been beaten down, some of those value stocks that were coming back. Inflation opinions changed. We saw gold get hit pretty hard, which actually translated into some of those foreign exchange products where gold is a proxy, particularly in the Aussie yen pair. We saw a shift, not quite as dramatic in the Aussie US dollar, but still in Australia, people tend to look at that as a proxy for those movements in the gold market. And then the other one was crude oil. With all of a sudden, that's actually more of a supply-demand product, right? And with the pandemic, people were just anticipating there would simply be no demand because we're stuck. So with a glimmer of light in the future, people are thinking, all right, demand is going to potentially uptick at some point, and we saw that run up, that spike in the crude oil markets. So again, our customers definitely came into all of those products. I mean, we just had explosive growth in new participants, explosive growth. I think we had a day where it was a record day for us in regards to the last 6 months, where it just got crazy, and it was across the board. But we had anticipated demand at some point, and so we're really glad that we built out our suite of knockout products. So offering all those commodities, offering the indices, increasing the number of foreign exchange pairs there. We were ready for it when the markets made a switch and people had access to those markets. Again, all designed for that retail customer who, might not have all that capital and still wants to get in on the price action. Nadex knockouts, Nadex call spreads, and clearly our binary options are bread and butter, where they are so small and it's a simple yes or no, true or false type of a proposition, and where you have an opinion and you can trade them. And the fact that you can day trade them, and the fact that it's not hugely capital intensive, and that everything's defined risk reward, it really made sense for a lot of these retail folks.
Let's talk about those customers that are flocking to Nadex these days. As we said at the top of the interview here, it's been just an amazing year from a retail volume perspective. Seen just new retail traders discovering the market en masse. We had Henry Schwartz, I call him the flow master, he's keeper of all the data over there at Trade Alert. He was on our election special last week saying there's pretty much a million one lots hitting the options market every day that didn't exist a year ago. And that's just pure retail, just gobbling up their one lot calls and your Apples, your Teslas and SPYs and everything else out there. So that's really changed the game from a broad options perspective. It sounds like you're seeing something similar over there at Nadex, but I'm curious what people are coming from for Nadex, because you guys over there have always managed to attract interesting pockets of liquidity. On previous appearances, you guys said your product was very popular with truck drivers and delivery personnel because they had time during the day and they can get in, get out really quick on the short duration contracts. So there were always interesting pockets of liquidity that were emerging over there at Nadex. So have you seen anything similar, any interesting new groups of folks discovering Nadex since the last time we chatted, and certainly during the run up to the election here?
100%. And that's also interesting, and we're going to wait and see how that continues to manifest itself. But our bread and butter, a lot of our core participants tended to be a little, and I'm going to say a little bit older, but I'm going to say, in their 30s and 40s, which is younger than me. So I don't want to call them a little older, but we did see a very large influx of younger participants, people who want to get in on the action, who understand the concept of binary options and that nature of what's going to happen here, and the fact that they're trading the probability of something occurring, and the fact that they can exit the position. So there's these opportunities where I think this is right now trading at a 20 probability. I can risk 20 to and if it becomes a true statement, it goes to 100, so I'll make 80, so I'm getting 4-to-1 odds. They understand that. It's something that really resonates with them. And the fact that they can say, I'm going to buy it at 20, and let's say they're right, and it goes right to the strike, and now it's even money, and it's a 50-50 proposition, right? The level that they're predicting, is it going to be above or below, and the price of the underlying are in sync, that's going to trade around a 50-50 probability. They don't have to sit there and go, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my original 20? Am I going to make my 80? Hey, it went from 20 to 50. Thank you very much. I'll take my $30. I'll take my 1.5 times return, and I'll make an opinion about something else. Let's look elsewhere. So we've definitely seen folks who understand that concept of trading probabilities, of the ratio of risk to reward, and then the fact that you can, through your prediction, manage it. So you can either, certainly take it off for a partial profit, but if you're wrong, you don't have to eat it all. You can say, hey, I took a shot. This has gone against me. I bought something at 30 and now it's at 10, and you know what? I messed up. I don't have to lose all 30 yet. You can potentially try to liquidate it and just cut your losses. So the fact that you can do that throughout the process and the time of the contract has certainly been appealing to people looking for fast, short-term price action. And we have seen some younger participants coming into those markets, again, because of the defined risk, defined reward nature of all of our contracts, it's probably a little bit more appealing because it's not that I'm saying it's any safer, but it's the fact that it's a known commodity up front, a known quantity up front, what you could potentially make and what you could potentially lose. It's been appealing to a lot of the younger folks.
That's one thing that's always appealed to me about the core Nadex binary contract. You talk about traditional options, you have to get into pricing models and the Greeks and how does theta work against gamma and how does vega figure into the equation. All these other things that could sometimes obfuscate what's going on and make the point of entry a little bit more difficult, a little bit more terrifying for particularly that, younger, newer addition to the trading landscape. But the binary is fairly straightforward. It's a short duration and the price is the probability. A lot of people understand that. They see a binary trading at 50, they know it's a coin flip right there. They can intuitively kind of grasp that, and as it approaches 1 or 100, they know they're getting to that pretty much 100% probability and vice versa down to 0. That's something that's, I think, easier and a lot more intuitive for people to grasp. So it doesn't surprise me, Todd, that more intuitive point of entry is starting to resonate with that, let's say, the one-lot crowd out there, sir.
Exactly. And people, and it is easier to understand and it is easier to get. So it makes it a little less intimidating when you don't have, you're right. You don't have all those other variables to think about. It reduces some of those barriers. And again, the fact that it's such a small contract and the fact that when you're trading that probability, whether it's 50 or 60 or 20, it's actually also the dollar amount. So we even made it so there's no multiplier or having to figure it out. If I'm buying a 60, I'm paying $60. What can it go to? It can go to $100. So the probabilities, the dollars, it all just make it easy and get some of these folks into the market who do want to have these short-term price action in the market and be able to do so. And maybe they'll eventually advance up into the more complex listed options and things of that nature. But this is certainly a way for new folks to get into the market and really, test the waters.
I know back in the day, you guys also offered things that were a little bit more, shall we say, opaque, like bull put spreads and selling those things and that type of thing. Are those products still available? Can you still trade those at Nadex, or is it pretty much all the binaries and the knockouts now?
I mean, we've got binaries, we got knockouts, and we have call spreads. Now, what people do is they can back into some of those positions. So, for instance, if something, let's just use binary options for an example. If there is no volatility and you've got a product that's just staying in a very, very small range and you think it's going to stay in that small range, you can sell the upside binary option. You can, you could trade the ones around it, looking where you buy the upside, you sell the downside, where you risk more for smaller potential profits. Both of them can't be wrong. Either one of them can be wrong, or they're both going to be right. And so there are people who are trying to do some of those types of plays in range-bound markets, or if they think it's going to be breaking out, just do the opposite. You can back into some of those more complicated spreads. It is possible, but you don't have to. I mean, right? Those are where you can up your game in binary options, or you can overlay. You can have a knockout and overlay a binary option on top of it. There are things that can be done that are a little bit more complicated and a little bit more sophisticated, but you don't have to. The core suite of products between binary options, call spreads, and knockouts, we make it as simple and easy as we can.
Speaking of getting a little bit more savvy, a little bit more sophisticated, I know back in the day when Dan used to be on our Futures Options Roundtable show, which was quite some time ago now, used to have interesting conversation around some of the more interesting use cases for binaries, particularly for some of the more experienced crowd who are out there already trading futures or perhaps options on futures type positions, maybe in the commodities like crude oil, for example, and perhaps they had a position on and they were maybe a little bit concerned about an event coming up up, like maybe there was an OPEC announcement that day, but they didn't want to go out and maybe buy an expensive hedge in the traditional, let's say, WTI options market. Could be a little bit pricey. So instead, they would fixate and do a very, very short duration hedge, maybe on the wings with a binary, buying something to the downside and a little bit to the upside, and just hedge them around the immediate event that was, let's say in this case, the OPEC announcement. I know that was a pretty popular use case back in the day. You're still seeing a lot of that overlap between the traditional commodity options and futures traders and then using the Nadex binaries as kind of maybe a cheap hedge?
For sure, there are people doing that. It's not the largest piece of our volume. And quite frankly, if you were in those markets and you weren't looking at those opportunities, you're probably missing out on ways to hedge your gains or protect your gains or limit your losses one way or the other in the event that something were to occur, particularly around a news announcement. If you weren't looking at these, you probably ought to be. But yes, we for sure have people who are paying attention to that because they realize it's this lower cost to entry and that you can certainly play binaries around a core futures position if you wanted to.
Well, I know one of the interesting holy grail type products for Nadex, pretty much since its inception back in the early days of Hedge Street, it was born as effectively an event derivatives platform. Things obviously evolved over time with the market and with the regulatory environment, but I know it's always been the goal somewhere over there to eventually offer some type of event contract. I know the holy grail, looking at what's going on right now in the places like DraftKings and others, would be how amazing would it be to have an actual contract where, let's say, I don't know, the Jets versus the Giants, or we just saw a big political election. We know overseas there was a lot of action on those markets, but not so much here in the U.S. due to a lot of different regulatory concerns. But I know this is an area you guys were born and were created for and have always had an interest in. Has there been any evolution on that front since the last time we chatted, Todd, in terms of, you guys like probabilities over there, the probability of us seeing some sort of binary type event contract in the future over there at Nadex?
Well, we do have event contracts, but they are ones that are core to the financial markets. That's really where we're not going to venture out. We are regulated by the CFTC. In fact, when it comes to binaries and knockouts on indices and on commodities and foreign exchange, we're the only regulated exchange for these types of products in those asset classes. There is another binary options exchange out there that offers products in the weather space. But for us, we do have event contracts, but they're around economic reports. So you'll see them around jobless claims and non-farm payroll. So yes, we do, and there'll be, the economists will make a prediction around where they expect. So, for instance, we actually have jobless claims number coming out Friday of this week, and I think the number that the economists are predicting is somewhere around 735,000. I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere in that range. And yes, then we've got numbers where is it going to be greater than that? Is it going to be less than that? And what do I think? Do I think that they've got this right? Do I think they've overprojected? Do I think they've underprojected? And we do have event contracts. So you could certainly take a look at our binary options. I know we've got jobless claims now, but you got to wait. And those contracts are available around those economic reports.
Well, Todd, unfortunately, that music means we come to the end of our sojourn. What a journey it's been. We talked about a lot of different things cooking over there at Nadex. But that said, Todd, if there's something else you want to leave our audience with, maybe a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease, could be a new product coming down the pipe, or maybe something you guys have going on right now over there at Nadex. Now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Right now, I'm going to tell you because you have until tomorrow to register. We are actually running a demo trading contest. You open up a free Nadex demo account, and it's a demo trading skills. It's going to run next week from November 15th to November 20th with real cash prizes. First place, someone's going to win $5,000 cash. Second place is going to be $2,500. Third place is going to win $1,000. But you only have until tomorrow to register for it. If you want to register, the website is join.nadex.com. join.nadex.com/Nadex-trading-challenge. Nadex-trading-challenge. Go there. Find that Nadex Trading Challenge. Open up a demo account. Register for the contest. It's a trading challenge, and who knows? Next week, there are going to be people. There's going to be 3 winners. It's a 5-day trading challenge. We're offering some special education, special speakers. I know that we're going to be having on Monday Guy Adami and Dan Nathan doing some market analysis, which I think we might make available to everybody. So if you check out the Nadex website for upcoming webinars, they're going to be doing some straight talking commentary on what they're seeing in some of this post-election market. But it's all around this trading challenge. Nadex Trading Challenge, I recommend you go sign up for it. It doesn't cost anything, and who knows? You have that opportunity to win some cash.
There you go. Check it out, the Nadex Trading Challenge. He mentioned the URL. We'll also tweet it out there, listeners, as well, so you can find it for us over there at Options. While you're following people on the old social medias, give them a follow over there at Nadex, at NADEX on most of the major platforms out there if you want updates on everything we just talked about, the knockouts, the binaries, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. I'm Todd. I'm glad to hear things are really exploding in a good way over there at Nadex, and I look forward to hearing more about what's going on in the realm of knockouts and binaries on our network in the near future, sir.
And it's always a pleasure to be here. It's great to chat with you. And one of these days, we'll have to get together for a nice hot coffee and maybe a beer.
There still is a coffee maker in our studio because of you, sir. That is your fault. You are probably the last person who has used it. Of course, we haven't had an in-person guest in most of the year either, so that probably helps as well. But we'll look forward to that. Maybe I'll have a cup of coffee after this conversation, just for old time's sake. And thanks for joining us out there. We love seeing you guys, not just on Interview Tuesday, but throughout the week for all of the shows we have at you. Coming in pretty much 2 shows at least a day, usually hitting you out there. If you like what you hear, remember, keep those reviews coming so that influx of new people can continue to discover the network. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Education Wednesday, of course, the Options Bootcamp and Options Playbook Radio back on Thursday again for the Option Block Episode 2, as well as, of course, for TWIFO this week in Futures Options. A lot more about what we were just talking about in the commodity option space, Futures option space. Tune into TWIFO every week. We do a whole show just about that. And on Friday, back again for Volatility Views, and it all kicks off again next week all the way through to another Interview Tuesday and another episode of Options Insider Radio.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.